Do you ever have trouble keeping your cool at work, especially when you're stressed out or dealing with some sort of personality conflict at work? Yeah, I've been there too. For example, I remember when I ran and locked myself in a bathroom stall to cry when some jerk told me at work that women would need to choose between having a family and getting into an executive level position. There was another time that an outside consultant yelled at me on a conference call and called me incompetent, with my own client present. After that call, my client called to speak to me alone. And well, that discussion didn't go exactly as planned. I'll share the whole story later in this video, and more importantly, a 4-step framework that you can use to help manage your emotions in conflict situations or even when having personality clashes with people at work. Now, before I get started with that framework, I want to invite you to grab a free copy of my book, She Engineers, which is a success guide for women in engineering and STEM. When you grab your copy, which you can see via the links right below this video, you'll also be signed up for my email list, where we periodically share free training opportunities where you can attend to learn more on this particular topic. Why is staying calm important? Well, the most successful STEM professionals stay calm in chaotic and stressful situations. This one particular skill is so important that we refer to it as one of the MVTs, or most valuable traits, in the book She Engineers. Now, this particular skill, and it's a skill, not some inherent trait that you either have or you don't, can be developed, and I'm going to share a framework with you in a few moments that you can use to help manage your emotions in the moment. But to understand why it's so important to practice this skill, you have to understand a little bit about what happens to your body when you're under stress. So when we feel a conflict or some sort of stressor, our bodies actually have a physical response. When that happens, you literally cannot access the problem-solving skills that you're known for. So let's look a little bit deeper about what happens to your body and your brain when that occurs. So what happens to your brain under stress? So when you have a triggering event, so something stresses you out at work, what happens is a little part of your brain called the amygdala is activated. And that's where anything related to fear lives. And so that little tiny piece, you can see it on the screen here, is kicked in. And then when that happens, you move into this purely reactive state. And I like to call it survival mode. This means that you literally are not thinking logically. Now, when you're in survival mode, typically you have one of these 3 reactions. You're either fighting, you're freezing, or you're trying to run away. And your reaction may even vary just based on the situation. So if you're in fight mode, typically you're going to get defensive or get really angry about the situation. If you freeze, you might literally freeze up and not react or even have trouble responding to the conflict when it happens. So if you've ever been in a meeting, some sort of conflict situation comes up, and then after you leave the situation, you're like, oh man, I wish I would have said that. That would be an example of a freeze reaction. The other reaction you could have is you want to run away, so flight. Procrastination is a form of this as well, especially one example relevant to this situation is if you've been putting off some sort of tough conversation that you know you need to have. You want to run away from conflict, maybe hide under your desk if you have the flight reaction when you are in a conflict situation. Now, those reactions from a human physiological standpoint worked really well if you are being chased by a hungry tiger like the one you see on the screen. And what happens as part of our body's reaction to that stress is that it activates something called the sympathetic nervous system, which causes hormones to be released into your bloodstream to prepare your body to react to that physical threat. So what happens is your heart rate increases, your pupils may dilate, You start breathing more rapidly. Your breathing gets more shallow, and your body moves away all the blood from your non-critical functions, which it sees as, your brain, your digestive system, into your major muscles so that you can get ready to run away from this threat. Now, here's the thing. That physical reaction causes your body's functions to, again, be diverted away from your critical thinking and problem-solving skills, because our bodies do not differentiate between the stress due to some sort of physical reaction, the animal chasing us, and stress due to some sort of conflict, personality clash, situation at work. So triggers are going to happen at work. We know that they are going to happen. We know they are especially prevalent for women in male-dominated fields, women in STEM. So the question becomes, this is not an if situation. This is a when situation. So what can we do about it? And the bad news about this is, again, this is a when situation. It's going to happen to all of us if it hasn't happened to you already. And so that's the bad news. But the good news is this is a skill like any other skill, like your technical skills that you can learn. And I'm going to share a framework momentarily with how you can move towards learning this skill and reacting in the moment so that you show up as a leader and enhance your reputation at work when you're in these conflict situations. So to do that, I'm going to share through an experience of a conflict I had. And I want to say up front that early in my career, I did not handle conflict well. I had situations where I would get very defensive. Something would happen, and I would need to excuse myself from the situation, run to the bathroom, lock myself in a bathroom stall, and cry. And then I noticed that a lot of the women at work that I looked up to, they were grace under fire. They were like rocks whenever they ran into a conflict situation. And those were the people that tended to be in leadership positions. They did this well. And so I learned how to do it and practiced it, and I didn't always get it right. And to this day, there are still some situations where I don't get it right. But in this particular situation, what happened was there was an error on a project, and we were on a conference call. So this was a team project conference call. Me as the representative of the firm I worked for at the time. There were a lot of other external consultants on the call as well as the client representative. And during the call, when the mistake came up, one of the other consultants started yelling at me and calling me incompetent, that I had, this was my fault. I had wrecked the entire project. Now the whole project was going to end up going on hold because we were going to be over budget. And he just went on this rant that I wasn't good at my job. Expletives were involved. And I could feel myself starting to have the flight, fight, freeze reaction. In my case, I tend to be a bit of a freezer and a bit of a running away person. And that's what started to happen in this situation. And so I will share what happened in the middle and the end of the call, which was completely not what I had expected when this person started going on this rant. But first, I want to give you an overview of the framework I used to kick my brain out of the survival instincts of running away from the conflict in my case, to being able to professionally resolve this conflict. So here is the framework. So the framework is SOAR, so an easy acronym to remember. And the SOAR stands for stop, observe, acknowledge, and respond. So when you stop, what you're going to want to do is pause. Basically, you're bringing awareness to how you are feeling and resisting that instant defensive response to fight, flight, or freeze. Taking deep breaths, because remember I said a couple minutes ago, the physical reaction to stress is your breathing gets very shallow and very quick. So you can help mitigate that physical reaction by taking some deep breaths to recenter yourself. Next, you're going to want to observe. And so this helps you gain a little bit of perspective on the situation. Give what you are feeling a name. what are the other parties in the situation? How are they reacting? You want to observe both yourself and what's going on with everyone else. And if you can, start to get a little bit curious about the situation. Don't worry, in a moment, I'll give you an example of exactly how I use this framework in this particular situation. Next, you want to acknowledge. So think about, okay, how can I resolve this situation? What do I need to do in this moment so that I show up in a way that is helpful to this situation? I can show up as a leader instead of in a way that is completely reactive and doesn't put me in the best light possible. Finally, you're going to respond. And notice, responding is the fourth step. So you're going to go through all of these steps before you respond. And what you've done by going through each of these steps is you've bought yourself time to ground yourself and respond in a professional way, in a way that is intentional. For myself and for most of the people I've worked with, the most difficult part of this framework is the first step, the stop. Becoming aware that you're having that defensive fight, flight, freeze reaction. Most often people find that once they're aware of it and can start that internal dialogue, the next three steps flow very seamlessly. So I wanted to share, I already shared taking deep breaths as a way of stopping. If you're finding deep breaths are not working, another thing you can do is keep a sip of water handy and just take a quick sip, and so that you give yourself some time to process. So let me go into the example in this particular situation. So this person was going on this rant about me being incompetent, and the first thing I did was stop. So as he's going on this rant, I start doing some deep breathing. One that works well for me is inhale to a count of 4, hold that for a count of 4, and then exhale for a count of 4. It took way more than one breath as he's going on this rant for me to kind of settle myself. But also, as I listened to it, taking these breaths, it started to allow me to begin to mentally distance myself from this. And as I did that, I could move to the observing part of the framework, where my internal dialogue went something like this. Man, this feels really terrible. I'm essentially being publicly shamed for this mistake. And I wonder, what is causing this person to just go on this rant? I started to get curious about, I wonder what's triggering this for this person. Like what is causing him to react in this very unprofessional way to what happened? And then my internal dialogue kind of moved to the acknowledge stage. And again, getting curious about the situation is a really good way to kick yourself out of your survival state, flight, fright, fight, freeze mode into your problem-solving skills, which we all know as STEM professionals we are known for. And so my internal dialogue at this point moved to this idea that there has to be something more behind this reaction that I don't know about that's coming from this person. And I knew that getting defensive or trying to point fingers or trying to defend what was going on wasn't going to be my best option for resolving the situation. I was thinking to myself, okay, what's the real problem here and how can we resolve it? And what is the best option for both diffusing the situation and redirecting the conversation back to the problem? Ranting about someone's competence or not, finger pointing, blame and shame game was not going to solve this issue. And so I got curious about, okay, what can I do to move this forward? And what I decided was clearly this person needed to be heard. You don't rant about things typically unless you're just really, really frustrated about the situation. So what I did is I acknowledged the frustration, and then I asked, and you can see a little script for paraphrasing what I said on the screen. And I said, I can hear you, I can see your frustration, but I'm curious what you think we could do to solve the problem at hand. Then I shared a couple ideas and said, what do you think? After I did that, there was probably a 30-second mode of silence on this call. And then all of a sudden I could hear everyone else kind of exhale and move into problem-solving mode, where everybody started brainstorming, suggesting solutions. And by the end of the call, we had several things to investigate to move forward. The client was happy that we had been proactive in resolving the problem. We had things to look at, and everyone was confident that the project would be able to move forward, which in fact it did, and it was completed. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. The moment after we hung up from this conference call, I received a call directly from the client who had been involved and had heard the entire thing from start to finish. And when that happened, that client said that they were so impressed with how I handled the conflict situation, so somebody being completely unprofessional, ranting at me, that their esteem of the firm I was working for and myself had gone up, and they would love to continue to work with us on future projects. So that underscores this idea that STEM professionals who handle conflict well, because we know none of us went into STEM because we love handling conflict, right? We went into this field because we like the technical part of the work. But learn to manage conflict and personality clashes and those difficult types of people situations at work, and you can pretty much write your own ticket to the top of your field. This single skill results in less stress and more ease for you, even if you have no ambitions of being the boss one day. Handle conflict well, and this is a game changer. Let's recap. The framework is SOAR, which stands for stop, observe, acknowledge, and respond. Try this out next time you're in a conflict situation and tell me below in the comments how it worked for you. Now, before you go, don't forget to grab your free copy of my book, She Engineers, by clicking on the links below this video. And if you found this video helpful and you want to learn more practical strategies, tips, and tools to find your voice, engineer a career on your terms, and make your mark on the world, make sure to subscribe to this channel.